The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Rodriguez family's backyard in the quiet suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. 3-year-old Emma Rodriguez sat cross-legged on her favorite pink blanket, having an elaborate tea party with her collection of stuffed animals. Her teddy bear, Mr. Buttons, occupied the place of honor at the head of her miniature table, while her rabbit, Princess Carrot, sat patiently waiting for imaginary cookies. "More tea, Mr. Buttons?" Emma asked in her sweetest voice, tilting an empty plastic teapot toward the worn brown bear that had been her constant companion since birth. The bear, missing one button eye and sporting a patch where Emma had once decided he needed surgery, seemed to nod his approval in the gentle breeze. Maria Rodriguez watched her daughter through the kitchen window, smiling at Emma's animated conversation with her toys. At 28, Maria worked double shifts at the local hospital as a nurse, and these peaceful moments with her daughter were precious. Emma's father had left when she was barely walking, leaving Maria to raise her bright, observant little girl alone. Despite the challenges, Emma had blossomed into a remarkably articulate child with an unusual ability to notice details that escaped most adults. The tranquility of their Tuesday evening was shattered by the sound of shouting from the house next door. Emma's head snapped up from her tea party, her large brown eyes widening with concern. The Williams house shared a chain-link fence with the Rodriguez property, and through the metal links, Emma could see into their neighbor's backyard clearly. Lisa. Park's screams pierced the air, high-pitched and desperate. Emma had seen Lisa before, a pretty woman with long black hair who sometimes waved at her over the fence. But now Lisa was on the ground near the back door of the house, blood streaming down the left side of her face, her yellow sundress torn and dirty. Emma's small hands clutched Mr. Buttons tighter as she witnessed something that would haunt her dreams for weeks to come. A man in dark clothing stood over Lisa, something metallic glinting in his hand. Emma couldn't see his face clearly from her position, but she noticed the way he moved, quick, nervous, constantly looking around. What struck her most was the dark mark on the side of his neck, like the pictures she'd seen in her coloring books, but scarier. "Please, David, stop." Lisa's voice carried across the yards, barely audible between sobs. The man with the dark clothes seemed panicked, constantly glancing toward the street. Emma watched in frozen terror as he raised his hand again. Lisa tried to crawl away, leaving a trail of blood on the concrete patio. The man looked around frantically once more, then suddenly bolted toward the side gate, disappearing into the alley behind the houses. For several long moments, the only sounds were Lisa's whimpering and the distant hum of traffic. Emma remained motionless, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She wanted to call for her mommy, but something about the scene kept her frozen in place, watching. Then Marcus Williams appeared from inside the house, and Emma's fear transformed into confusion. She knew Marcus. He was the nice man who had helped her retrieve her ball when it bounced over the fence last month. He was tall and gentle, with kind eyes and a soft voice. Emma had seen him working in his garden many times, always careful not to disturb the flowers. Marcus rushed to Lisa's side, his face contorted with shock and panic. "Lisa, oh God, what happened?" His voice carried clearly in the still air. Emma watched as he knelt beside the injured woman, his hands hovering uncertainly over her wounds. "I was in the shower. I heard screaming. Who did this to you?" Lisa was barely conscious, mumbling incoherently. Marcus looked around desperately, then ran inside, presumably to call for help. When he returned moments later with a towel in his phone, Emma could hear him talking rapidly to someone, the emergency dispatcher, she would later realize. "My girlfriend has been attacked in our backyard," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "She's bleeding badly from her head. I don't know who did this. Please hurry." Emma continued watching, mesmerized by the unfolding drama. Marcus was gentle with Lisa, carefully pressing the towel against her wounds, speaking softly to keep her conscious. "Stay with me, Lisa. Help is coming. You're going to be okay." The sound of sirens grew louder, and Emma could see the red and blue flashing lights reflecting off the windows of nearby houses. Within minutes, the Williams backyard was filled with police officers and paramedics. Emma pressed herself closer to the fence, her small fingers gripping the metal links as she watched the organized chaos. When the first police officer saw Marcus kneeling beside Lisa's bloodied form, the reaction was swift and decisive. "Step away from her now. Put your hands where I can see them." Emma's mouth dropped open in shock. "No," she whispered to Mr. Buttons. "He didn't hurt her. The scary man hurt her." But the police officers couldn't hear her small voice over the commotion. They saw Marcus Williams, a large black man covered in Lisa's blood, and their training kicked in. Within seconds, Marcus was face down on the concrete, his hands zip-tied behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent," Officer Torres began, while his partner, Officer Chun, secured the scene and began photographing evidence. Emma watched, in growing distress, as Marcus was pulled to his feet and led toward a police car. "I didn't do this," Marcus protested, his voice desperate. "Someone attacked her. I found her like this." "Save it for your lawyer," Officer Torres replied grimly, guiding Marcus into the back seat of the patrol car as the ambulance pulled away. With Lisa and the police cars departed with Marcus, Emma remained sitting on her blanket, holding Mr. Buttons tight against her chest. Her 3-year-old mind struggled to process what she had witnessed. She had seen the real bad man hurt Lisa, watched him run away, and then seen Marcus try to help. But the police had taken Marcus instead. "They got the wrong person, Mr. Buttons," she whispered to her teddy bear, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. "They took the nice man, but the scary man got away." Inside the house, Maria Rodriguez was just learning about the commotion next door from a neighbor's phone call. She had no idea that her daughter had just become the only witness to a crime that would soon dominate headlines and challenge everything the justice system thought it knew about eyewitness testimony. As darkness fell over the suburban neighborhood, Emma finally gathered her toys and went inside. But the images of that afternoon were already burned into her remarkably retentive memory. She would carry the burden of truth that no adult was yet ready to believe. The truth that would eventually set an innocent man free and bring a real predator to justice. The case that would become known as the baby witness trial had begun. With a 3-year-old's tea party and a teddy bear named Mr. Buttons, neither Emma nor anyone else could have predicted that her clear, innocent observations would soon shake a courtroom to its very foundations. For 3 days after the arrest, Maria Rodriguez watched her daughter Emma transform from a carefree toddler into an anxious child consumed by what she had witnessed. Every morning, Emma would set up her dolls in the same configuration on the living room floor, Barbie lying hurt while Ken knelt beside her trying to help, and a small action figure hidden behind the toy house representing the real attacker. "Mommy, they took the wrong man," Emma would repeat obsessively, moving her Ken doll's hands as if applying pressure to Barbie's wounds. The scary man with the dark mark on his neck hurt the crying lady. Ken was trying to help her feel better. Maria initially dismissed it as Emma processing trauma through play, but the consistency and specificity of details began to unsettle her. As a nurse, Maria was trained to observe and document, and what she was seeing didn't match typical childhood imagination or trauma response. Emma's account never varied, not in sequence, not in details, not even in her emotional reactions to specific parts of the story. On Thursday morning, Emma drew a picture that made Maria's blood run cold. Using her crayons with surprising precision for a 3-year-old, Emma had drawn stick figures that clearly depicted the scene, A woman in yellow, Lisa's sundress. A figure in dark clothes running away with something silver in his hand. And another figure in different colored clothes kneeling to help. Most disturbing was the dark scribble Emma had added to the running figure's neck area. "Emma, baby, tell Mommy about this mark," Maria said gently, pointing to the scribble. Emma looked up from coloring another picture. The scary man had a dark picture on his neck, right here, she said, touching her own neck just below her left ear. It looked like the snake in my book, but scarier. Maria felt her heart skip. She had worked enough trauma cases to know that children Emma's age rarely fabricated such specific details consistently over multiple days. Her daughter was describing what sounded like a tattoo, something that had never been mentioned in any news reports about Marcus Williams. That afternoon, Maria called the Phoenix Police Department and asked to speak with the detective handling the Williams case. After being transferred 3 times, she finally reached Detective Sarah Chun. "Detective Chun, this is Maria Rodriguez. I'm Marcus Williams' neighbor, and I believe my daughter witnessed the actual attack on Lisa Park." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Ma'am, how old is your daughter?" "She's 3. But, Ms. Rodriguez, I appreciate your concern, but 3-year-olds have very active imaginations. They often create elaborate stories from fragments of things they've heard adults discussing." Maria felt her frustration mounting. "Detective, with all due respect, my daughter has been recreating the same scene with her toys for 3 days. She's describing details that haven't been released to the public. She says the attacker had a tattoo on his neck and that Mr. Williams wasn't even outside when the attack happened." Detective Chun's tone remained politely dismissive. Children that age can't distinguish between reality and fantasy very well. They also tend to pick up on conversations around them. "I'm sure she's heard neighbors talking. We've barely spoken to anyone about this. Please, just listen to what she has to say. She's extremely articulate for her age, and she's never shown any signs of making up elaborate stories before. Ma'am, even if your daughter did see something, the courts don't recognize testimony from children under 7 in most circumstances. Their memory and perception aren't considered reliable." Maria's voice sharpened with determination. "Detective Chun, I'm a registered nurse at Phoenix Children's Hospital. I work with children every day. I know the difference between childhood, fantasy, and genuine recollection. My daughter is describing a third person at the scene, someone who fled before Mr. Williams appeared. Doesn't that at least warrant investigation?" The line went quiet for several seconds. Finally, Chun sighed. "Look, Ms. Rodriguez, we have a solid case. Marcus Williams was found covered in the victim's blood, alone with her in the backyard. The victim was unconscious and couldn't tell us what happened. We have physical evidence, opportunity, and But do you have motive?" Maria interrupted. "Have you found any history of violence between Mr. Williams and Miss Park? Any previous domestic disputes?" Another pause. "The investigation is ongoing." That's not an answer. "Detective, I'm not asking you to dismiss your case based on a toddler's word. I'm asking you to consider that there might be more to this story. What if there really was someone else there? What if Mr. Williams is telling the truth about finding her after she was already injured?" Maria could hear papers shuffling on the other end. "Miss Rodriguez, I understand you want to help your neighbor. This isn't about helping anyone. It's about the truth. My daughter saw something that night, and she's been trying to tell anyone who will listen. She draws the same scene over and over. She acts it out with her dolls. She's having nightmares about the scary man getting away, while the nice man gets in trouble." Detective Chun's voice softened slightly. "Even if I believed a 3-year-old could be a reliable witness, which I don't, what exactly do you think she saw that would change anything?" Maria took a deep breath. She saw the real attacker. A man in dark clothes with a snake tattoo on his neck. She watched him hurt Lisa Park, then run away through the side gate before Marcus Williams ever came outside. She saw Marcus find Lisa and try to help her. Detective, if there's even a chance she's right, don't you have an obligation to investigate? The silence stretched longer this time. Finally, Chun spoke. What exactly is your daughter saying about this ... Attacker? Maria felt a surge of hope. She says he was wearing all dark clothes, not what Marcus was wearing. She says he had something shiny in his hand that he used to hurt Lisa. Most importantly, she says Lisa called him by name. She says Lisa said, "Please, David, stop." The pause was so long that Maria wondered if the line had disconnected. When Chun finally spoke, her voice was different, sharper, more focused. "Did you say David?" "Yes. Emma has repeated that name consistently. She says the crying lady said, 'Please, David, stop,' before the scary man ran away." "Ms. Rodriguez, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Have you or your daughter heard Lisa Park mention anyone named David? Any previous conversations, arguments, anything?" "No, Detective. Emma and I barely knew Lisa Park. We'd wave hello over the fence occasionally, but we've never had any conversations about her personal life. Emma wouldn't know any names unless she heard them that night." Detective Chun was quiet for another long moment. When she spoke again, Maria could hear a new tension in her voice. "Ms. Rodriguez, I think I need to meet with you and your daughter after all." The admission felt like a victory, but Maria sensed there was something Chun wasn't telling her, something about the name David that had changed everything. "When can you come?" Maria asked. "Tomorrow morning? And Ms. Rodriguez? Don't discuss this conversation with anyone else until we talk. If your daughter really did witness what she says she did, there might be more at stake here than just one wrongful arrest." As Maria hung up the phone, Emma appeared in the doorway with her favorite doll clutched against her chest. "Mommy, is someone going to listen to me now about the scary man?" Maria knelt down and hugged her daughter tight. "Yes, baby. Someone's finally going to listen." But as Maria looked into Emma's trusting eyes, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to uncover something much more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Dr. Amanda Foster had built her reputation on the impossible getting children to reveal truths that adults couldn't or wouldn't see. At 42, she had spent nearly 2 decades specializing in forensic child psychology, working with young victims and witnesses in cases that ranged from custody disputes to violent crimes. Her office in downtown Phoenix was carefully designed to put children at ease. Soft lighting, colorful toys scattered strategically around the room, and walls painted in calming pastels that encouraged openness rather than fear. When Detective Chung called her Friday morning, Dr. Foster was reviewing case files for 3 other child witnesses scheduled for the following week. None of them were as young as Emma Rodriguez. "Amanda, I need your help with something unusual," Chun said, her voice carrying an urgency that Foster recognized from their previous collaborations. "I've got a 3-year-old who claims to have witnessed an assault, and her account directly contradicts our arrest." Foster set down her coffee and reached for her notepad. 3 years old? "Sarah, you know that's pushing the absolute bottom limit for reliable testimony. Most courts won't even consider it." "I know, but there are details." "Amanda, this child is describing things that weren't released to the press. She's mentioned a name that has me very concerned." "What kind of name?" Chun's hesitation spoke volumes. "The victim has a restraining order against an ex-boyfriend named David Morrison. It expired 6 months ago, and we couldn't locate him to serve the new one she filed 3 weeks before the attack." Dr. Foster felt her pulse quicken. In 20 years of forensic psychology, she had learned to recognize the moments when a case shifted from routine to potentially explosive. "And the child mentioned this name?" "Repeatedly." She says she heard the victim call the attacker David and beg him to stop. Amanda, if this 3-year-old is right, we've got the wrong man in custody and a dangerous predator still on the streets. That afternoon, Dr. Foster sat across from Emma Rodriguez in her office, watching the child carefully arrange a dollhouse family with the methodical precision of someone much older. Emma had been shy at first, clinging to her mother's leg, but the promise of playing with Dr. Amanda's special toys had quickly won her over. Emma, your mommy told me you saw something scary happen to your neighbor. Dr. Foster began gently, settling onto the carpet beside the child. Can you tell me about that day? Emma looked up from the dollhouse, her large brown eyes serious beyond her years. I was having tea with Mr. Buttons when the screaming started, she said matter-of-factly. The scary man was hurting the crying lady in her backyard. Dr. Foster had interviewed hundreds of children, and she recognized the signs of genuine recollection versus fabricated or coached stories. Emma's body language was relaxed but focused, her eye contact direct and unwavering. Most tellingly, she spoke about the traumatic event without the dramatic embellishment typical of childhood fantasies. Can you show me what happened with these dolls? Foster asked, gesturing to a collection of figures scattered around the dollhouse. Emma immediately selected a female doll in a yellow dress and a male doll in dark clothing. With startling precision, she recreated the scene she claimed to have witnessed, narrating as she moved the figures. The scary man had something shiny and pointy, Emma explained, using a small toy knife she had found among the accessories. He made the crying lady fall down, and there was red stuff on her face. She paused to move the dark-clothed doll toward the dollhouse door. Then he looked around real scared-like and ran away super fast. What happened next, Emma? The nice man came out of the house. He didn't have the shiny thing. He knelt down like this, Emma demonstrated with a different male doll, and he tried to make the crying lady feel better. He put cloth on her ouchies. Dr. Foster made careful notes, struck by the child's consistent narrative and her ability to distinguish between the two male figures in her account. Emma, did you hear anyone say anything that day? Emma nodded vigorously. The crying lady said, "Please, David, stop," real loud. She was very scared of the scary man. And what did the nice man say? He said, "What happened to you?" And help is coming. He was trying to make her not be scared anymore. Over the next hour, Dr. Foster employed various techniques to test Emma's account. She asked the same questions in different ways, had Emma draw pictures of what she saw, and even tried to introduce contradictory elements to see if the child would incorporate them into her story. Emma remained consistent on every detail. Most remarkably, when Foster showed Emma photographs of several different men, including Marcus Williams, Emma immediately pointed to Marcus and said, "That's the nice man who tried to help." When the photos included David Morrison's booking photo from a previous arrest, Emma's reaction was immediate and visceral. She pushed the photo away and said, "That looks like the scary man, but I couldn't see his face good. But he had the dark mark right here," pointing to her neck. "Emma, tell me about this dark mark you keep mentioning." Emma picked up a black crayon and drew a squiggly line on her paper. It was like a snake, but scarier. Right here on his neck. The scary man touched it when he was looking around before he ran. Dr. Foster's heart rate increased. She had reviewed David Morrison's file before the session. He had a distinctive cobra tattoo on the left side of his neck, a detail that had never been mentioned in any media coverage of the Williams arrest. "Emma, how do you know so much about what happened? It sounds like you are watching very carefully." Emma's expression became sad. "I was having a tea party with Mr. Buttons and Princess Carrot. I heard screaming, so I looked through the fence. Holes. I saw everything, but nobody believed me when I tried to tell them. Why do you think it's important that people believe you? Emma's response was delivered with the kind of moral clarity that only children possess. Because they took the wrong person to jail. A nice man didn't hurt anybody. The scary man hurt the crying lady, and then he ran away. That's not fair. As the session concluded, Dr. Foster felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. In her professional opinion, Emma Rodriguez was not fabricating her account. The child displayed none of the typical markers of coached testimony or fantasy elaboration. Her consistency across multiple retellings, her emotional responses to specific details, and her ability to provide information that aligned with undisclosed evidence all pointed to genuine eyewitness testimony. But convincing a courtroom that a 3-year-old could be a reliable witness would be the challenge of her career. More immediately pressing was the implication of Emma's account if she was correct. A violent predator was still free, while an innocent man sat in jail. After Maria and Emma left, Dr. Foster immediately called Detective Chun. "Sarah, I need you to sit down for this," she began. "That little girl is telling the truth. Every psychological indicator I have suggests she witnessed exactly what she claims. More importantly, she identified David Morrison from a photo lineup and described his tattoo without any prompting." "Jesus," Chun breathed. "Are you saying we arrested the wrong man?" "I'm saying you need to find David Morrison immediately." "And Sarah? If Emma is right about what she saw, Morrison knows there was a witness to his attack. A witness who can identify him and place him at the scene. You think Emma might be in danger?" Dr. Foster looked out her office window at the busy Phoenix streets, wondering if David Morrison was out there somewhere, possibly aware that a 3-year-old had seen his face. "I think," she said carefully, "that we need to move very quickly on this case, because if Morrison realizes what Emma saw, she and her mother could become his next targets." The race against time had officially begun, and everything depended on whether the justice system was ready to listen to its youngest witness ever. The emergency meeting in Judge Patricia Hawkins' chambers felt like a war council preparing for an unprecedented battle. It was Monday morning, just 4 days before Marcus Williams' trial was set to begin, and the revelation of Emma Rodriguez as a potential witness had turned the entire case upside down. Judge Hawkins, a veteran of 23 years on the bench, had presided over thousands of criminal cases, but she had never faced a situation quite like this. At 58, she was known for her methodical approach to justice and her fierce protection of legal precedent. Now she found herself staring at a file that could either make legal history or destroy her courtroom's credibility. "Let me understand this correctly," Judge Hawkins said, removing her reading glasses and fixing her stern gaze on the assembled attorneys. "The defense wants to call a 3-year-old child as their primary witness to establish reasonable doubt. In a domestic violence case?" Defense attorney Robert Kim shifted uncomfortably in his chair. At 34, he was considered a rising star in Phoenix's legal community, but this case was testing every skill he had developed. "Your Honor, Dr. Foster's evaluation confirms that Emma Rodriguez possesses unusually advanced verbal and cognitive abilities for her age. Her testimony could exonerate my client." Prosecutor Janet Mills leaned forward aggressively. "Your Honor, this is a desperate defense tactic. The precedent for accepting testimony from a witness this young is virtually non-existent. We're talking about a child who still believes in the tooth fairy being asked to recall details of a violent crime." "Actually," Dr. Foster interjected from her seat near the back of the chambers, "Emma Rodriguez doesn't believe in the tooth fairy. When I asked her about fantasy figures during our evaluation, she told me they were just pretend for fun. Her ability to distinguish between reality and imagination is remarkably sophisticated." Detective Chun cleared her throat. "Your Honor, There's something else the court needs to know. Based on Emma's identification and description, we've been investigating David Morrison, Lisa Park's ex-boyfriend. Morrison has a history of stalking and domestic violence. We found his DNA on a knife, discovered exactly where Emma said the attacker discarded it. The silence in the chambers was deafening. Judge Hawkins set down her pen and stared at the detective. Are you telling me that this child directed you to evidence that exonerates the defendant? Yes, Your Honor. Morrison was arrested yesterday at a motel in Tucson. He's being extradited back to Phoenix as we speak. Prosecutor Mills looked like she had been physically struck. Her case against Marcus Williams was crumbling in real time, but her professional reputation was built on never backing down from a fight. Your Honor, even if this Morrison character is involved, that doesn't necessarily exonerate Williams. There could have been multiple attackers. Robert Kim pulled out a folder thick with documentation. Your Honor, Morrison confessed last night. He admitted to attacking Lisa Park in a jealous rage and fleeing when he heard sirens. He specifically stated that Marcus Williams was not present during the assault. Judge Hawkins rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the decision before her. Dr. Foster, in your professional opinion, is this child capable of providing reliable testimony in a court of law? Dr. Foster stood and approached the judge's desk. Your Honor, I've tested Emma Rodriguez extensively using every standard protocol for evaluating child witnesses. Her memory is extraordinarily detailed and consistent. Her ability to distinguish between different time sequences is well above average for her age. Most importantly, she shows no signs of coaching, fantasy elaboration, or suggestibility. But she's 3 years old, Judge Hawkins emphasized. Yes, but age alone doesn't determine testimonial capacity. Some adults make terrible witnesses due to poor memory, bias, or dishonesty. Emma Rodriguez possesses none of those limitations. Her youth actually works in her favor. She has no reason to lie, no understanding of the legal implications, and no bias regarding the outcome. The defense attorney leaned forward eagerly. Your Honor, there are precedents in other states for accepting testimony from witnesses as young as 4. In Minnesota versus Henderson, a 4-year-old's testimony was crucial in convicting a child abuser. That was a 4-year-old victim of the crime, Mills countered. This is a 3-year-old bystander being asked to recall details that could free a violent criminal. Alleged violent criminal, Kim corrected sharply. My client maintains his innocence, and now we have both DNA evidence and eyewitness testimony supporting that claim. Judge Hawkins stood and walked to her window, looking out at the courthouse steps where media vans had been gathering since news of the unusual witness had leaked. She knew that whatever decision she made would be scrutinized by legal experts across the country. If I allow this testimony, she said slowly, we'll need unprecedented accommodations. The courtroom environment is intimidating even for adult witnesses. Dr. Foster opened her briefcase and pulled out a detailed proposal. Your Honor, I've prepared a comprehensive plan for Emma's testimony. We would need frequent breaks, the presence of comfort items, a modified witness stand adjusted to her height, and the option to have her testimony recorded in chambers if the courtroom environment proves too overwhelming. What about cross-examination? Judge Hawkins asked. How does a 3-year-old handle aggressive questioning from opposing counsel? Mills straightened in her chair. Your Honor, I would never aggressively cross-examine a child witness. However, I do have the right to test the reliability of any testimony presented in my courtroom. Dr. Foster would remain present during any questioning, Kim suggested. She could intervene if the questions become inappropriate or if Emma shows signs of distress. Judge Hawkins returned to her desk and opened Emma's evaluation file. The child's drawings were paper-clipped to the front crude, but remarkably detailed depictions of the crime scene that aligned perfectly with physical evidence. What about the jury? the judge asked. How do we ensure they evaluate this testimony objectively, rather than being swayed by the emotional impact of a child witness? We'll need extensive jury instruction, Kim acknowledged. The jury must understand that they should evaluate Emma's testimony based on its consistency and accuracy, not her age. Detective Chun spoke up again. Your Honor, there's one more factor to consider. Morrison's confession includes details that only the actual perpetrator would know, details that match Emma's account exactly. The angle of attack, the specific injuries, even the sequence of events. Judge Hawkins closed the file and looked around the room. This is uncharted territory, but justice sometimes requires us to navigate uncharted waters. However, I have conditions. Everyone leaned forward expectantly. First, Emma's testimony will be limited to what she directly observed. No speculation, no interpretation, no leading questions. Second, Dr. Foster will remain present throughout. Third, if at any point the child becomes distressed or unable to continue, we stop immediately. Fourth, the jury will receive detailed instructions about evaluating child testimony. Your Honor, Mills began, but Judge Hawkins held up her hand. I'm not finished. Fifth, we'll have therapy dogs available in the courthouse. I understand that Officer Torres and his K-9 partner Rex were first responders to the scene. They'll be present during Emma's testimony to help her feel more comfortable. Robert Kim felt a surge of hope. Thank you, Your Honor. This could change everything. It already has, Judge Hawkins replied grimly. We're about to find out if our justice system is mature enough to hear truth from the mouth of a child. God help us all if we get this wrong. As the meeting adjourned, none of them could have predicted that the presence of K-9 Officer Rex would become the most crucial element of Emma's testimony, or that a whispered conversation between a 3-year-old and a German shepherd would rock the legal world to its foundations. The courtroom had never been quieter. Emma Rodriguez stood beside Rex, her small hand still resting on the German shepherd's head, while 300 people held their collective breath, waiting for her to speak. The weight of anticipation was so heavy it seemed to press against the courtroom walls. Judge Patricia Hawkins leaned forward slightly, her maternal instincts warring with her judicial responsibility. Emma, sweetheart, can you tell everyone what you whispered to Rex? Emma looked around the packed courtroom with her characteristic blend of innocence and seriousness. Her large brown eyes took in the jury, the lawyers, the spectators, and finally settled on Marcus Williams, who sat frozen at the defense table, his entire future hanging on whatever this 3-year-old was about to reveal. I told Rex something very important, Emma said, her clear voice carrying through the courtroom's perfect acoustics. She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts with the same methodical care she used when arranging her dolls for tea parties. I told Rex that I saw the real scary man throw something shiny in the bushes before he ran away, and that the police needed to look there. The courtroom erupted. Spectators gasped, reporters frantically scribbled notes, and several jury members leaned forward in their chairs. Judge Hawkins banged her gavel repeatedly, trying to restore order, but Emma wasn't finished. And I told Rex, Emma continued, raising her voice slightly to be heard over the commotion, that the scary man dropped something else too. He dropped a piece of paper when he was running away. It flew out of his pocket when he was jumping over the fence. Defense attorney Robert Kim was on his feet instantly. Your Honor, this is crucial new evidence. We need to— Mr. Kim, sit down, Judge Hawkins commanded, her gavel working overtime. Order in this courtroom. But Emma, emboldened by the reaction she was receiving, continued with the unstoppable momentum of a child who finally had everyone's complete attention. The piece of paper had writing on it, she said, her voice growing stronger. I saw it blow under Mrs. Peterson's rosebush next door. The scary man was looking for it but couldn't find it because he was running too fast. Prosecutor Janet Mills felt her world tilting. She rose slowly, her voice barely controlled. "Your Honor, I object to this. This dramatic revelation. This child has had multiple opportunities to mention additional evidence, and now the child is still testifying." Judge Hawkins interrupted sharply. "You'll have your opportunity for redirect. Emma, did you tell anyone else about seeing this paper?" Emma nodded vigorously. "I told Mommy, but she said maybe I was remembering wrong because I was scared. And I told Dr. Amanda, but she asked me about it when we were playing with dolls, and I forgot to mention the paper because I was thinking about the shiny thing." Dr. Foster stood up from her seat in the gallery, her professional composure cracking. "Your Honor, during our sessions, Emma was consistent about the weapon disposal, but children sometimes recall details in fragments. It's entirely possible." "Dr. Foster, please be seated. Emma, tell us more about this paper." Emma looked down at Rex, who seemed to be watching her with unusual intensity, then back at the courtroom. It was white paper with black writing. I could see it from my tea party blanket because the wind blew it against the rose thorns. When the police came with their flashy lights, the paper was still there, but nobody looked for it. "Detective." Sarah Chun, who had been sitting in the gallery, suddenly stood up. "Your Honor, we need to investigate this immediately. If there's evidence we missed, Detective Chun, you'll have your opportunity. But first, Emma, I need to ask you something very important. Are you absolutely sure about what you saw? The shiny thing in this paper?" Emma's response was delivered with the kind of absolute certainty that only children possess when they're her. Telling the complete truth. "I'm super sure. I saw everything from my tea party. The scary man hurt the crying lady with the shiny thing. Then he threw it in the bush by the fence. When he was climbing over the fence to run away, something white fell out of his pocket. He looked back for it, but was too scared to come back and get it." She paused, looking directly at Marcus Williams. "And then the nice man came out of his house and found the crying lady and tried to help her. He didn't have any shiny thing, and he didn't drop any paper. He was just trying to make her feel better." The courtroom was electric with tension. Emma's revelation had just potentially provided 2 additional pieces of evidence that could either confirm or destroy the prosecution's case against Marcus Williams. Robert Kim could barely contain his excitement. "Your Honor, we need an immediate recess to investigate these claims." "If Emma is correct, Your Honor," Mills interrupted desperately, "this is highly irregular. We can't just stop a trial every time a witness remembers something new." Judge Hawkins looked at Emma, who was now sitting cross-legged on the floor, next to Rex, completely oblivious to the legal earthquake she had just triggered. The child was gently stroking the German shepherd's fur and humming softly to herself, as if she had simply finished telling a bedtime story rather than potentially revolutionizing a murder case. "Emma," Judge Hawkins said gently, "is there anything else you remember about that night? Anything else you haven't told us?" Emma looked up thoughtfully. "I remember that after the police cars left, I was very sad because they took the wrong person. I told Mr. Buttons that the grown-ups made a mistake, and that the scary man was still out there somewhere." She stood up and looked directly at the jury with heartbreaking sincerity. "I just wanted someone to believe me, so the nice man could go home, and the scary man would get in trouble instead. That's why I told Rex everything. Dogs are good listeners, and Rex was there that night too. He remembers." As if on cue, Rex lifted his head and looked around the courtroom, his intelligent eyes seeming to confirm Emma's words. Judge Hawkins felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. In 30 minutes, a 3-year-old had potentially identified new evidence, confirmed existing evidence, and delivered testimony that could free an innocent man while ensuring a guilty one faced justice. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced, this court is in recess for 2 hours while we investigate the claims made by this witness. Detective Chun, I want officers at both locations Emma described within the next 15 minutes. As the courtroom erupted in chaos, Emma remained seated beside Rex, completely unaware that she had just delivered what would become known as the most consequential child testimony in American legal history. She had told the truth, as she always did, and now it was up to the adult world to prove she was right. The race to find Emma's evidence had begun, and with it, the final chapter of a case that had already changed everything anyone thought they knew about justice, truth, and the remarkable power of an innocent child's clear-eyed observations. The Maricopa County Superior Court had never seen a media circus quite like this. By 7 a.m. on trial day, news vans from across the Southwest lined the streets surrounding the courthouse. Reporters clutched coffee cups and adjusted their microphones, preparing for what legal analysts were calling the most unprecedented child testimony case in Arizona history. Emma Rodriguez stood in the courthouse hallway, wearing her favorite purple dress with white polka dots and clutching Mr. Buttons against her chest. At 3 years old, she was oblivious to the fact that her testimony could reshape legal precedent across the nation. To her, this was simply the day she would finally tell grown-ups the truth about what she had seen. Maria Rodriguez knelt beside her daughter, smoothing Emma's dark hair with trembling hands. Remember what Dr. Amanda told you, Mia? Just tell the truth about what you saw, okay? Just like when you play with your dolls. Emma nodded solemnly. I remember, Mommy. The scary man hurt the crying lady, then ran away. The nice man tried to help her. That's what really happened. Dr. Amanda Foster approached them, her professional smile barely masking her own nervousness. In 20 years of forensic psychology, she had never faced stakes this high. Emma, are you ready to go into the big room with all the people? Will there be nice people there? Emma asked, her large brown eyes showing the first hint of uncertainty. Very nice people, Dr. Foster assured her. And remember, if you feel scared or need to take a break, just tell Dr. Amanda, and we'll stop right away. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Judge Patricia Hawkins had cleared the gallery of media photographers, but sketch artists sat poised to capture every moment. The jury, 7 women and 5 men, carefully selected for their ability to evaluate testimony, objectively watched as court officers made final adjustments to a specially constructed witness platform that would allow Emma to see over the witness stand. Marcus Williams sat at the defense table, his hands clasped tightly in front of him. 2 weeks in jail had taken their toll. His usually neat appearance was haggard, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. But for the first time since his arrest, hope flickered in his expression. His attorney, Robert Kim, had explained that this little girl might hold the key to his freedom. Prosecutor Janet Mills reviewed her notes one final time. Morrison's confession had complicated her case significantly, but she wasn't ready to concede defeat. She had built her career on thorough prosecution, and she intended to test every piece of evidence, even if it came from a 3-year-old witness. All rise, the bailiff announced. The Honorable Patricia Hawkins presiding. Judge Hawkins entered with measured steps, acutely aware that legal scholars would dissect every decision she made today. She had spent the previous evening reading case law from across the country, searching for guidance that simply didn't exist for a situation this unprecedented. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Judge Hawkins began, today you will hear testimony from an unusual witness. Emma Rodriguez is 3 years old. I want to emphasize that you must evaluate her testimony based on its consistency, detail, and accuracy, not on her age. Children can be remarkably observant, and sometimes their lack of bias allows them to see things that adults miss. The Jury members shifted in their seats, their faces revealing mixtures of curiosity, skepticism, and concern. Mr. Kim, you may call your witness. Robert Kim stood, smoothing his tie nervously. Your Honor, the defense calls Emma Rodriguez to the stand. The courtroom held its collective breath as Dr. Foster led Emma through the gallery. Emma's small hand gripped the psychologist's firmly, her eyes wide as she took in the imposing room filled with adults in dark suits. The specially modified witness stand seemed enormous, even with its adjustments. Bailiff Martinez, a father of 3, gently helped Emma onto the platform and adjusted the microphone to her level. There you go, sweetheart. Just speak nice and loud so everyone can hear you. Emma looked out at the sea of faces and found her mother in the front row. Maria smiled encouragingly and gave her a small wave. Emma waved back, her natural friendliness beginning to overcome her nervousness. Emma, Robert Kim began gently, can you tell everyone your full name? Emma Sofia Rodriguez, she replied clearly, her voice carrying surprising strength through the courtroom sound system. And how old are you, Emma? I'm 3 years old. I'll be 4 on my birthday in December. Several jury members smiled, despite the gravity of the situation. Emma's innocent directness was already having an impact. Emma, do you know what it means to tell the truth? Emma nodded vigorously. It means you don't make up stories. You say what really happened, not pretend things. And do you promise to tell the truth today? Yes. Mommy says lying is bad, and I don't want to be bad. Judge Hawkins leaned forward slightly. Emma, I'm the judge. Do you see the man sitting over there? She pointed toward Marcus Williams. Emma looked and nodded. That's the nice man who tried to help the crying lady. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Williams' eyes filled with tears at the child's simple declaration of his innocence. Emma, Kim continued, I want you to tell everyone about the day you saw something happen in your neighbor's backyard. Do you remember that day? Emma's expression became serious, as if she understood the importance of what she was about to share. I was having a tea party with Mr. Buttons and Princess Carrot. We were drinking pretend tea and eating pretend cookies. And then what happened? I heard screaming. Really loud screaming. It made me scared, so I looked through the fence holes to see what was wrong. Kim approached the jury box, ensuring they could see Emma clearly. What did you see when you looked through the fence? Emma took a deep breath, her small hands gripping the edge of the witness stand. I saw the scary man hurting the crying lady. She was wearing a pretty yellow dress, but it got all torn and dirty. She fell down, and there was red stuff on her face. Can you tell us about this scary man? He was wearing all dark clothes. He had something shiny and pointy in his hand, and he had a dark picture on his neck, right here. Emma touched her own neck to demonstrate. Prosecutor Mills leaned forward, studying Emma's demeanor carefully. The child showed no signs of coaching or rehearsal. Her responses were spontaneous and emotionally authentic. What happened next, Emma? The scary man looked around real scared like when I hide from Mommy and think I might get in trouble. Then he ran away really fast through the gate. And then the nice man came out of his house. He saw the crying lady hurt on the ground, and he got really worried. He knelt down like this. Emma demonstrated the position, and he tried to make her feel better. He put a cloth on her ouchies and talked really gentle to her. Did you hear anyone say anything that day? Emma nodded emphatically. The crying lady said, Please, David, stop. She was really scared of the scary man. But the nice man, he said things like, What happened? And help is coming. He was trying to make her not be scared. The courtroom was completely silent. Emma's clear, consistent account was delivered with the kind of matter-of-fact honesty that only children possess. Her testimony aligned perfectly with the physical evidence and Morrison's confession. "Emma," Kim said softly, "are you sure about what you saw?" Emma looked directly at the jury, her 3-year-old sincerity radiating through the courtroom. "I'm sure. I saw everything from my tea party. The scary man hurt the crying lady and ran away. The nice man tried to help her. That's the real truth." As Kim concluded his direct examination, the courtroom remained in stunned silence. Emma Rodriguez had just delivered testimony that was more compelling than many adult witnesses could provide. Her innocence, clarity, and unwavering consistency had painted a picture of events that completely exonerated Marcus Williams. But the most dramatic moment of the trial was still to come, and it would involve an unexpected reunion with a 4-legged friend who had witnessed the same terrible night from a very different perspective. The 2-hour recess stretched into 3 as Phoenix. Police officers combed through the evidence locations Emma had described with the precision of archaeologists uncovering ancient treasures. Detective Sarah Chun stood in the Williams' backyard, watching her forensics team carefully extract items that a 3-year-old's eyes had seen, but adult investigators had missed. The knife emerged first from the exact bush Emma had indicated, still bearing traces of Lisa Park's blood despite being exposed to weather for 2 weeks. But it was the second discovery that sent shockwaves through the investigation team. Under Mrs. Peterson's rosebush, exactly where Emma said the wind had blown it, lay a crumpled piece of paper. Officer Martinez carefully bagged the evidence, noting that the paper appeared to be a restraining order, specifically a copy of the expired order that Lisa Park had previously filed against David Morrison. Written in Morrison's handwriting across the bottom were the words, "She can't hide from me forever." Detective Chun's radio crackled to life. "Detective, we've got Morrison in interrogation room 2. He's asking for his lawyer, but when we showed him photos of the recovered evidence, he started talking." Back at the courthouse, Emma Rodriguez sat in Judge Hawkins' chambers, coloring pictures while the adults around her made frantic phone calls and reviewed evidence reports. She had drawn another picture of that terrible night, but this one was different. It showed 2 police officers finding the scary man's things exactly where she had said they would be. Dr. Foster sat beside Emma, marveling at the child's resilience. "Emma, do you understand what's happening because of what you told everyone?" Emma looked up from her crayons. "Are they going to let the nice man go home now?" "I think they might, sweetheart. You told the truth, and sometimes the truth helps fix mistakes that grown-ups make." "Good," Emma said simply, returning to her coloring. "Mr. Buttons said the nice man looked very sad. He should be happy at his own house." Judge Hawkins returned to her chambers carrying a folder thick with evidence reports, crime scene photos, and Morrison's partial confession. Her face reflected the weight of a decision that would affect multiple lives and reshape legal precedent. "Dr. Foster, the evidence corroborates everything Emma testified to. The knife has Morrison's fingerprints and Lisa Park's blood. The restraining order copy has Morrison's handwriting and threatens future contact. Most importantly, Morrison has confessed to the attack after being confronted with the evidence Emma led us to." She sat heavily in her chair, looking at Emma, who was now showing her drawing to Mr. Buttons, as if the teddy bear could appreciate her artistic efforts. "In 30 years on the bench, I've never seen anything like this. A 3-year-old has just solved a case that would have sent an innocent man to prison for 25 years. When court reconvened, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. News of the evidence discovery had spread through the courthouse like wildfire, and every seat was filled with observers witnessing what legal historians would later call watershed moment in American jurisprudence. Emma had been excused from further testimony, but she sat in the front row with her mother and Dr. Foster, clutching Mr. Buttons and watching the proceedings with the same focused attention she gave to her favorite cartoons. Prosecutor Janet Mills stood before the bench, her professional composure barely masking her personal and legal defeat. Your Honor, in light of newly discovered evidence corroborated by the witness testimony of Emma Rodriguez, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Marcus Williams. The courtroom erupted in applause that Judge Hawkins made no attempt to quiet. Marcus Williams collapsed forward onto the defense table, his shoulders shaking with emotion as 2 weeks of nightmare finally ended. Furthermore, Mills continued. When the noise subsided, David Morrison has been formally charged with aggravated assault, stalking, and violation of a restraining order. His confession, combined with the physical evidence recovered at locations identified by the witness, provides overwhelming proof of his guilt. Emma tugged on Dr. Foster's sleeve. Is the nice man happy now? Dr. Foster pointed to Marcus Williams, who was being embraced by his attorney and family members. See for yourself, Emma. You helped him get his freedom back. Emma smiled with the pure satisfaction of a job well done. I told you the grown-ups made a mistake. I'm glad they fixed it. Judge Hawkins called for order one final time. Before this court adjourns, I want to address what we have witnessed here today. Emma Rodriguez, at 3 years old, has demonstrated that truth can come from the most unexpected sources. Her courage to speak up, her consistency in telling what she saw, and her remarkable attention to detail have not only freed an innocent man, but have also ensured that a dangerous individual was brought to justice. She looked directly at Emma, who was waving at Marcus Williams as he walked past her row. Emma, you may not understand this now, but you have changed how our courts will listen to young witnesses. You have shown us that age doesn't determine the value of truth. The media dubbed it the miracle of courtroom 4A. Emma's testimony sparked immediate legislative discussions about child witness protocols in 43 states. Law schools began teaching courses on pediatric testimony evaluation. Dr. Foster received requests from jurisdictions across the country to develop training programs for working with young witnesses. But perhaps the most significant change occurred 6 months later, when the Marcus Williams Foundation was established to provide legal assistance to wrongfully accused defendants. The foundation's logo featured a small child and a German shepherd, representing the unlikely partnership between Emma and Rex that had revealed the truth. Emma Rodriguez returned to her normal toddler life, largely unaware of her impact on legal history. She continued having tea parties with Mr. Buttons and Princess Carrot, but now her play often included stories about brave police dogs and kind judges who listened to little girls when they told the truth. Marcus Williams, completely exonerated, became a juvenile counselor, dedicating his life to helping young people navigate difficult situations. He visited Emma on her 4th birthday, bringing a special gift, a golden retriever puppy named Justice. David Morrison was sentenced to 15 years in prison after pleading guilty to all charges. During his sentencing hearing, he admitted that he had been watching the Rodriguez house for days after his arrest, planning to silence what he thought might be a potential witness. Emma's courage in speaking up had not only freed an innocent man, but had also protected herself and her mother from a dangerous predator. Dr. Foster often reflected on the case that changed her career. Emma Rodriguez proved that wisdom isn't about age, it's about clarity of vision. Sometimes it takes the innocent eyes of a child to see what adults have overlooked. On quiet afternoons, Emma would sometimes look over the fence where it all began and tell her mother about the importance of always telling the truth, even when grown-ups don't want to listen. She had learned, at 3 years old, that her voice mattered, a lesson that would shape not only her life, but the lives of countless others who would benefit from a justice system that finally understood the power of listening to its youngest witnesses. The case of Emma Rodriguez versus adult assumptions had ended not with legal precedent citations or complex judicial reasoning, but with the simple truth that justice belongs to anyone brave enough to speak it, regardless of age.